Okay, let's dive straight into today's explainer because we are looking at a truly epic lit RPG journey. Imagine for a second, you're a 10,000-year-old demon king, right? You literally rule hell. You're this unstoppable force of nature. And after all that time, you finally figure out how to return to modern Earth. Sounds great, right? Well, when you actually arrive, you realize Earth is totally infested with monsters. And worst of all, the system has basically knocked you all the way down to level 1. Yep, that's the exact wild premise of the story we're breaking down today.
So what actually happens when the King of Hell loses all his powers? Well, our protagonist, Kong Wu, he literally forces a dimensional rift just to escape the endless, ugly bloodshed of hell. He just wants to go home, you know? But as soon as he lands, Earth's defense mechanism completely overloads him. He wakes up in a random forest, opens his status window, and his jaw just drops. His terrifying demonic powers are almost entirely sealed away, and his stats have absolutely plummeted. When he finally gets back to civilization and gets tested, the magic orb reads him as a total F-rank nobody. I mean, we're talking about going from the absolute apex predator to the very bottom of the food chain in the blink of an eye.
Moving on to my first major arc, Escape from Hell and the Kimchi Stew Incident.
Now, Kang Wu is basically a walking contradiction, and it is hilarious. On one hand, you've got this terrifying demonic ruthlessness. He's a guy who's ready to rip the life force from his enemies without a second thought. But on Earth, he harbors the most incredibly mundane desires. For one, he is absolutely sickened by tentacles, mostly thanks to an overly attached succubus queen back in Hell, which is a whole other story. Really, all he wants to do is eat some delicious, normal Korean food and read web novels in peace. It's the ultimate retired villain just wants to grill energy, and honestly, the story executes it perfectly.
And this leads us to the greatest moment early on. Kang Wu gets invited to a home-cooked meal by a girl named Han Sola. He is literally crying tears of joy over a simple bowl of kimchi stew. He's been waiting 10,000 years for this. But then, her arrogant, low-level thug of a brother busts into the room, wrecks the table, and spills the stew. Guys, big mistake. You do not spill the Demon King's stew. Kang Wu completely snaps, he viciously obliterates this thug, pins him to the ground with literal arm blades, and tortures him until the guy screams this exact phrase at the top of his lungs, "Kimchi stew is sacred." It's just so good. All right, let's jump into the next section, grinding, gathering, and leveling up. So, to get his powers back, Kang Wu has to figure out a way around the Gaia system. Think of this as Earth's planetary defense framework. It specifically prevents human players from being consumed by demonic abilities. Because of this massive restriction, Kang Wu can't just run around absorbing the stats of all the arrogant human players he meets. Instead, he's forced to bypass them and exclusively farm monsters. He uses his demonic gluttony skill on monster corpses to feast on their demonic energy. This lets him simultaneously level up his player stats while secretly unsealing his old, hellish powers.
And as you can see, his power progression is just explosive. Going from a level 1 nobody to level 11, he unlocks something called Insatiable Hunger, which lets him absorb energy even faster. Get this, he even starts casting buffs on boss monsters. He drives them into an insane frenzy, making them way harder to kill, just so the system hands over massive bonus XP. It's crazy. By level 30, he hits his 4th awakening, unlocking Ruler of Demonic Energy. This proves exactly why enemies are incredibly foolish to underestimate a supposed F-rank player who knows how to aggressively break the system.
But here's the thing, he isn't just grinding his stats. He's strategically building an empire in the shadows. He recruits Han Sola as his dedicated healer and buffer, and then he goes and summons Echidna, who is a literal dragon familiar taking the form of a girl. But the craziest part of his faction? He finds this triple S rank sword prodigy named Kim Si-hoon. Kang Wu watches this kid fight, immediately realizes he has serious main character energy, and secretly hits him with the demonic skill called soul subordination. So he literally turns this prodigy into a fiercely loyal pawn without the kid even knowing it's happening. Kang Wu is quietly building an army while pretending to just be your average everyday guy.
Which brings us to our next major threat, the cult of the demonic order. Because, you know, peace never actually lasts. Enter the demonic order. They're this fanatic, covert cult actively attempting to bypass the Gaia system so they can summon demons to Earth. Their ultimate goal? Bringing hell to the human world. Now just think about this from Kang Wu's perspective for a second. He literally just spent 10,000 agonizing years trying to escape hell. The absolute last thing he wants is for a bunch of fanatics to drag hell right back to his front door, ruining his peaceful life and, more importantly, his favorite restaurants. And as we've established, Kang Wu has zero tolerance for anyone ruining his day. So when a corrupt party from the Endress Guilds tries to bully him inside a gate, he doesn't just fight them, he outsmarts them in this brutal 200 IQ play. Instead of fighting head-on and risking exposing his true strength, he stomps his foot, using a sound manipulation skill to create a massive shockwave of noise. This attracts a huge horde of lizard men. He then casts silence on himself, climbs up a tree, and literally just sits there watching the monsters rip the arrogant guild to shreds. It's a true hidden badass moment.
Now let's look at things escalating in, clashing with a god.
So, the stakes reach absolute world-ending levels over in Japan. Through a totally wild series of events, Kang Wu finds himself face-to-face with the summoned power of the god Susanoo, who is wielding the divine spear Gungnir. The clash of their magic literally lights up the entire city. Kang Wu is bleeding black blood, getting pushed to his absolute physical limit. To win, he has to condense his demonic energy so tightly that he effectively turns his own power into a bomb, detonating it just to shatter the divine power of the god. It is, without a doubt, an unbelievably epic showdown.
But defeating a god yields some absolutely insane rewards. Kang Wu ends up unlocking transcendent gear called the Key of the Demonic Energy Sea. This thing is indestructible, it can transform into literally any weapon he has saved as a skill, and it boosts his weapon power by a massive 34%. This epic loot drop officially elevates our former level 1 nobody right back into being a world-class powerhouse. And that leads us right into the climax. The massive demon summoning. Thousands of demons. We're talking over 1,000 true demons pouring into the world. The demonic order finally manages to execute their catastrophic plot in Vladivostok, Russia, ripping open dimensional rifts. Humanity is instantly thrown into absolute panic. The sheer scale of the disaster is unprecedented, and the world's top players are absolutely terrified at the overwhelming numbers just flooding out of this rift.
But just as humanity starts falling into total despair, Kang Wu's ally, the fiery guildmaster Youngju, makes this brilliant tactical shift. She rallies the terrified human forces with one incredible, game-changing line. Treat this like a chance to earn as much experience as possible. It completely changes the vibe. They stop looking at it like some apocalyptic invasion and start looking at it like a massive lit RPG farming opportunity. That hype completely turns the tide of the battlefield.
So the entire world thinks they are facing doomsday. But Kang Wu? Oh, he's practically drooling. This global disaster is secretly the all-you-can-eat buffet the Demon King has been desperately waiting for to completely unseal the rest of his powers. Isn't it incredibly ironic that the only thing standing between Earth and the forces of Hell is Hell's own former ruler, who's really just annoyed they interrupted his dinner? It makes you wonder, just how unstoppable will he become once he finally eats his fill? Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and definitely keep your eyes peeled for the next one.